Hey y'all, so I am out here today because it is 65 degrees and it is not windy at all. And here in Oklahoma, it's less about how hot or how cold it is, but more about if the wind's blowing or if the wind's not blowing. So it's a super nice day today, so I wanted to get out here and get some things done. And so for today's list of to-dos, I will be doing the succulent project that I didn't get done yesterday. And I'll be taking some suckers off some trees. I will be planting the anemones and the ranunculus corms out into the raised beds. So let's turn around and let's just get started. All right, so one more thing before we get started on the stuff back in the raised beds. I had a question from the last video about my pots. And so someone had asked, are my pots pre-glazed and colored, or do I paint them? So the answer to that question is both. You can see like this pot right here is pre-glazed. That's the color it came. This is a terrazzo pot. That's a concrete pot. But here, this one and the one in the very back, those are just terracotta pots. I had a stack of pots years ago that I was just going to get rid of. And terracotta pots are cheap. So I decided, why don't I just paint them to fit my color palette? And so that's exactly what I did. I went to the store and I bought some spray paint and I painted these at least 2 years ago. And you can see that other than like us hitting them and nicking them up, they really have held up really well. So that's a little tip and trick for a money saving option for pots that you want to be in your color palette but are terracotta. So you can try it at home. It's worked well for me. But yeah, to answer that question, a little tip and trick on saving some money. And don't mind all of this stuff back here. Some stuff got done back there the other day, and that is a trash pile that we just haven't got to yet. But I'm certain that we will because it's on the list. All right, so these are the anemone corms that I pre-sprouted, and you can see they're doing pretty well. They haven't all broken the soil surface, but I did take some soil out of the pots for the ones that haven't broken the soil surface to see if those were viable. I think that was on Friday. And if there is a container in this flat, there is a viable corm. And so I'll be getting all these planted. I'm gonna amend this soil with plant tone. And then we will also do the ranunculus corms, and I'll flip around to those right behind me once we're done with these. All right, so I got them all placed. Now we'll just go ahead and get them planted. And if you can hear in the background, there is a local bar up the street that has live music today. And so that's what's going on in the background. But let's just go ahead and get these guys in the ground and get them watered in. And you guys look at the roots on these things. They did really well. This was a mix, and so not everything came up at the same time, hence why there are some that haven't broke the soil surface yet, but there was only actually a couple anemones that I had that didn't produce. No, no carrots. Nope, it's not a vegetable. It's called an anemone. It's a really pretty flower. Yep, back there in that back bed closest to you. Those are all veggies. Yep. Yep. No carrots. Not this year. Are you? That's cool. Carrots and broccoli? Ooh. Very nice. All right, so the anemone planting is done. I know it doesn't look like much right now, and I know that, you know, pre-sprouting some of these corms and sticking them out here before they have come up above the soil and been hardened off, it's just the disadvantage of pre-sprouting a mix. I need to get these things in the ground. Otherwise, the ranunculus are looking actually pretty sad. I think they just need to be put into the ground. The anemones are looking a lot better than the ranunculus. So, you know, if we lose a couple, we lose a couple, not the end of the world. But I guess it'll be an experiment to see after pre-sprouting a mix of anemones and a mix of ranunculus and planting the corms that haven't completely broken the soil surface yet is a good idea or is a bad idea. We'll find out. All right, now let's tackle the ranunculus. Okay, and so that's the ranunculus again, kind of like the anemones, doesn't look like much. And I'm honestly a little bit disappointed with their ranunculus. Like, they were really thriving, doing really well. And I honestly, I'm not really sure. I think I probably overwatered them a little bit. I had them in a tray and I forgot that they were in a tray. And so they were sitting in water for about a day. So maybe that contributed to it. I don't know. We'll give it a shot and we'll see what we get out of these. But that's the ranunculus. Now let's look at doing the succulent arrangement. Just kidding. Let's get all this stuff watered in really quick before I forget. And we'll just go ahead and water everything while we're at it. Okay, so got everything all watered in with the exception of the back beds. I'll do that later once I'm finished with this video. But you could probably see, or at least I hope you could see in this video, that the sprayer that I was using, it's an old broken sprayer. It leaks. It's not a great sprayer, but it throws out this like fine mist because all of the little holes are clogged in the end of it, and it's perfect for seeds and it's perfect for seedlings, so that's why I use it back here. But let's just go ahead and I guess get the succulents potted up. All right, so we have a pot with great drainage. This is a pot that I plant succulents in, and I've had succulents in it for years. I use the same variety of succulent, and I don't do anything special. I don't use potting soil for cactus and succulents. I don't put rocks in the bottom. All I do is add regular potting soil, and I use this Echeveria every single year. So the Echeveria Gray Red, it does really well in these pots at least. And I just kind of pack them in there, and this is what it looks like. So I just pack them in there, do really well, obviously take minimal water, but I don't do anything special with these, even though they're succulents. So get this filled with potting soil. I try to do a little bit of a mounding effect as well, typically. All right, so I try to mound it up a little bit, and then down here it's about half an inch below the plot level because this soil will kind of taper down and I don't want it to constantly be running over the edge every time I water. So that's the purpose of the lower soil level. And I'll be keeping all of these containers. I know I've mentioned that in previous videos, but I will be keeping all these containers because they are perfect for upsizing pots for seedlings. So I do grow quite a few succulents every year, and on my intro video when I mentioned, you know, where my love of gardening came from and things like that, what I should have mentioned also was that my great-grandpa had a greenhouse and all that was in his greenhouse were cactus and succulents. So he had a pretty large greenhouse that was full of all succulents and all cactus, and although I never got to see it, my mom has some pictures of it, and I think that's also partly where my love of gardening came from. All right, and we're gonna squeeze the last two of these guys in here. All right, and so really I was about one short, but these will grow together and fill in. A lot of them already have little babies growing off of them, so they will grow in over time and kind of just look all like one plant. So that is the succulent container. And also a lot of people will say, you know, it's hard to keep water and stuff out of succulents. My trick is just overhead water, and over time all that dirt will come out of its leaves. So
there we have it.
All right, and so the next thing on the list is going to be this red bud directly behind me. You can see it has a lot of suckers on it, and I'm just gonna get all of those cleaned up, as well as on the Japanese maple. And I've got my Philcos and I've got them sterilized. I sterilize my Philcos every time I switch from plant to plant, especially large things like trees and things that are really important to the landscape, because sometimes you just don't know, you know, if something's dealing with a disease, if something has going on. The last thing you want to do is trim one tree and then transfer it to another. So I always clean my Philcos in between, and then I just clean them with rubbing alcohol. Just basic rubbing alcohol or disinfectant will work. But I need to get these cleaned up because this tree is sending growth into suckers that I don't want the tree to send growth into. So there might be some that I do keep. I'm gonna kind of like step back and look at the structure of the tree. I don't know a ton about trees, guys, but I know to trim suckers because they're putting energy into suckers when they could be putting energy into, you know, large branches or the actual trunk of their tree. So if they're not something that you want to keep on a tree, it's beneficial to just go ahead and get rid of them. So I'm going to get rid of probably most of these. I don't really see anything on this tree specifically that I really want to keep. It's just going to depend on when I get up there and when I look at it, kind of what I'm thinking, because we did lose a branch that was like right there, and it kind of came out over the yard just a little bit, but it had something going on with it, so we had to get that trimmed up. But you can always trim suckers to your liking, so if you want to keep that, it will eventually turn into a large branch, and you just have to decide what you want. So let's get started. All right, so let's just start with these suckers right here. And you can see right here, this has been trimmed up. And so that's where you're generally going to see most of your suckers forming. They're either gonna form from a previous prune cut, or they're going to sprout from a dormant node on the tree. And really the most important thing is that your pruners are sterilized and that you trim as close to the base as you can get of the sucker without getting into the trunk or the branch of the tree. So I'm just gonna come in here, I'm gonna snip those there. And then some of them too, you guys, some of them are so small, like that one that I just did with my thumb. You can just kind of come in there and remove with your fingers. It doesn't take any special equipment. Let's look at this one up here. Okay, and how about this one? So you can see here that if this was a pruning cut, it was done a very long time ago. It's more than likely probably just a dormant node. So again, we're gonna just take those off. And I'm just gonna go through here and do this to the entire tree. And I am going to keep what I want on the tree, if anything, and get rid of what I don't. So here we go. Okay, and I also got sidetracked pulling up Boston ivy. I am going to be fighting that Boston ivy for probably a very long time. We can't just put some sort of stump killer into the vine because the vine is grown around the base of the tree, and so it shares soil space with the tree. So if we put some sort of vine killer, like drilled a hole into it, because some of it actually is large enough to be able to drill a hole and then dump some stump killer into it. If we did that, I worry about the tree itself. I worry about once that vine dies, it kind of degrading into the soil. So I think Arbor Image is actually going to help us out with that. They have some sort of solution for that. I don't know what it is. The last time Corey was here, he just mentioned it to me. So we may have them take a look at that because I don't want to do anything to harm the trees. So let's turn around here though and look at this really quick. I do want to show you something. Okay, so I opted to keep this guy right here, and I'm hoping that it will come right below this branch right there and kind of fill in that space, because that's almost where we lost the last one. You can see it right there. So I'm going to leave that. Something else is, when you're trimming things out of your trees, what you don't want to do is you don't want to let things grow into the center of the tree. So if it's growing into the center of the tree, crossing the midline of the tree, or if it is rubbing up against another branch, you definitely want to get rid of it. All right, and hopefully you guys can see this. The sun is a little bit harsh, but these right here are going to be coming off. And then this one up here, let me move my finger so it will focus right there. That will be coming out because that is growing into the midline of the tree. But first I need to get my Felcos sterilized and then we'll get this one trimmed up. Okay, and got that one trimmed up. I do not condone climbing on the wood pile, but I really didn't want to go inside and get the step stool. So on to the next one. These are more node growth, like old node growth. They're not coming up from the bottom of the actual plant itself. This is actually a Japanese maple, but instead they're just coming out of some old nodes. There's nothing coming out down at the bottom, as you can see down there. So I'm just gonna get these cleaned up really quick. I've got my trimmers and they have been sterilized, and so this is pretty simple. Go in, don't get into the actual node itself, and some of these you can just kind of more or less take off with your hands if you wanted to, but I preferred to use my clippers. Just go in, again, don't get into the trunk of the tree, but give it a little snip and get rid of it. Most of this is super simple, repetitive, sort of spring maintenance things for me at least. That. Some bigger ones down here. This whole thing off. And you know, these wouldn't hurt the tree by any means. The reason for taking these off is just because I want to make the tree more aesthetically pleasing, and I want the tree to put its energy into producing the top canopy of the tree and the branches that are most important to this tree. And these down here are not important to this tree, so just gonna be taking them off. And really there's not that many. Couple little here and there. When they're that small, I'll just kind of take my fingers and kind of go against them. But yeah, that's just a little bit of tree maintenance, basic spring maintenance. Okay, and this one doesn't have much. I'm gonna be removing these two suckers right there, and then I have been letting this guy grow right here. So we have somewhat of a void. Let me show you. We have somewhat of a void up here. You can see some dead wood on that Japanese maple that needs to be cleaned up. Arbor Image will do that for us. But we have this void here, and it used to probably be completely shaded. That Japanese maple, you can see like right here and over here, and there was one over here that looked like they had broken in the ice storm a couple of years ago, and they will bounce back and rebound. But in the meantime, I'm thinking about letting this guy grow and kind of see what it'll do. I can always come back and cut it later, and it's going to take a long time for it to grow back, so I'm going to err on the side of caution and just take these two off here and let that one go and kind of see what it does. All right, so simple as that. And really that's all I have for you guys today. Actually, I keep saying one more thing, but let me show you guys one more thing. I do need to clean up this viburnum underneath over here, but I just really don't feel like doing it today. So I'm not going to, but I am going to show you guys something else. Okay, so on your peonies, you probably already know this, but there are always sap like this on the buds. And it is not uncommon to see ants on peonies, and they'll a lot of times be up here on the bud because they will eat the sap. And I do think that it probably helps the buds open up a little bit sooner, but it is a mutual relationship. So while it might help open the buds a little bit sooner, really the ants protect this plant from non-beneficial insects like aphids and things like that that will harm the plant. So it's kind of mutually beneficial for both the ant and the plant. So I think a lot of people sometimes, well, not a lot of people, but some people will, you know, take a look at it and go, oh, I have so many ants everywhere. Because I know years ago when I started growing peonies, I thought the same thing. I was like, why is there so many ants on here? And it can kind of be an issue when these mature plants start to really open up and throw out a lot of blooms. There can be issues with ants in the petals and the leaves and things like that when you take them in to put them in a cut arrangement. But overall, the ants are beneficial. So if you see ants out there, just know that it's beneficial to the plant to leave them on there. And this peony is a pink Hawaiian coral. And I think this picture doesn't really do it justice. I posted a picture of it on my Instagram the other day, and it has more of a coral appearance. It's like pink and then it fades to coral. It's very, very pretty. Let me see here. These are pretty common plants, but you can see here zones 4 through 8. They're hardy here in our area. They get really large here for us. And usually I will use a round stake. They make these stakes that are round and that go all the way around the plant, and then it keeps all of the branches from leaning over too far and breaking off. Because once these things really are established and they're, you know, a 3 or 4 year old plant, you'll get tons of blooms on it. They're prolific bloomers and they will get very, very heavy. So I use that ring stake. But anyways, I just thought that that would be something to mention, because as I was walking by here, I was just looking at it. So some of you guys may already know that, but some of you might not. So there is the scoop on the peonies. All right, y'all, so for real this time, this is all I have for today's video. I hope this video was helpful in some way, and I have a lot of watering to do, so I'm gonna get after that. But you guys enjoy the rest of your day, and we will catch you guys in the next video. Thanks.